Imagine trying to plan the exact future for hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, that is not a small task.
Right. I mean, spread across thousands of islands, all with these competing economic interests, cultural differences, and, deeply personal aspirations.
It's massive.
If you get the formula wrong, the economy just collapses and millions suffer. But if you get it right, well, how do you even begin to define what right looks like at that kind of scale?
You really can't use the standard metrics.
Exactly. We're not talking about projecting like quarterly corporate earnings here. We are talking about engineering the trajectory of an entire civilization without accidentally suffocating it in the process.
It's easily one of the most complex logistical and philosophical puzzles in modern administration. I mean, you were basically trying to tame chaos, but you got to do it in a way that remains, flexible enough to survive reality.
Which is the core mission of our deep dive today. We're
Correct.
opening up what is basically a masterclass in large-scale strategic planning.
Yeah, the source material for this one is fascinating.
It really is. We get our hands on this wildly detailed guest lecture delivered back in 2011 at the University of San Francisco School of Business. It was given by Dr. Dun Solihan.
Right, and he was a director at Bappenas, which is Indonesia's Ministry of National Development Planning.
And Bappenas is essentially the architect behind Indonesia's National Development Planning System, or NDPS.
Exactly. And this lecture is basically a blueprint of their entire operational playbook.
So if you're listening to this, you might not be managing a sprawling island nation yourself. But whether you're trying to align a massive corporate merger, organize a grassroots community initiative, or you're just fascinated by how complex systems actually function, this blueprint offers a really, really scalable framework.
It really applies to almost any large-scale organizational challenge.
Right. But before we get into the gears of how this bureaucracy actually functions, we have to look at what they're actually trying to build.
Yeah.
Because the lecture completely upends the traditional definition of quote-unquote development.
It does. It completely redefines it.
Because when I hear national development, my brain immediately just goes to concrete.
Oh, sure. Yeah, physical infrastructure.
Yeah, picture pouring miles of highway, expanding seaports, stringing up power grids, that kind of thing.
Well, but that physical infrastructure is just the default assumption for most of us. But Dr. Solihan actually anchors the NDPS in models from these prominent developmental thinkers who look way past the concrete.
Okay, so who does he bring in?
Well, he brings in a framework from Kartasasmita from 1996, which argues that development isn't about physical assets at all. It's fundamentally a process of change toward better conditions through a planned effort.
A process of change. So that reframes it from an end product to like an active ongoing state.
Exactly. It changes the entire focus. And then he layers in this model from Todaro from the year 2000, which outlines 3 very specific developmental goals.
Okay.
So the first one aligns with our default assumptions, right?
Right.
Improving living standards. So boosting per capita income, ensuring reliable food supplies, shelter, healthcare, education.
Right. The basics.
Yeah, you have to secure the physical necessities of life first.
I like to think of that first goal as basically upgrading a computer's hardware.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like you need the physical infrastructure, the faster processor, the reliable battery, just to get the machine to turn on and survive the daily demands.
Right, it's the baseline for survival. But Todaro's second goal pushes into entirely different territory.
Okay.
The second mandate of national development is creating conditions that allow for the growth of self-confidence or self-esteem within the population.
Wait, I have to pause there because seeing the word self-esteem explicitly listed as a formal operational objective for a massive government bureaucracy is, it's kind of shocking.
It is really unusual.
Right. Like we usually measure a nation's success by GDP or unemployment rates. You don't usually see government spreadsheets tracking human dignity.
You rarely do, yeah. And the third goal Todaro identifies is increased freedom or democracy. So true development under this framework requires all 3. Tangible living standards, intangible self-esteem, and political freedom.
Gotcha. So to carry that computer analogy forward, building conditions for self-esteem and freedom is like upgrading the operating system.
Right, exactly.
Because you can have the shiniest, most expensive hardware in the world, but if the operating system is locked down or restrictive or just broken, the machine is useless. The hardware is the physical shell, but the operating system is the animating force that allows it to actually be creative.
And that distinction highlights why purely infrastructural approaches to development so often fail on the global stage.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we've seen historical examples where a nation focuses entirely on extracting resources or building megacities, but they just completely ignore the agency and dignity of their citizens.
And what happens?
The result isn't a developed nation. It's a fragile, hollowed-out system. If the people living in those shiny new cities feel powerless, the development is basically an illusion.
So the goal is incredibly holistic. It's about human flourishing, not just economic output. But measuring self-esteem is incredibly subjective.
Highly subjective, yes.
If you're going to mandate something that abstract and complex,
Yeah.
you need an operational system capable of processing it. And, bureaucracies aren't exactly famous for their delicate handling of human emotions.
No, they are definitely not.
So how does the NDPS actually process these lofty goals?
Well, they do it by running 4 distinct planning engines simultaneously. The system relies on these different approaches interacting and honestly often colliding with one another.
Let's break those down. What's the first engine?
The first is the political approach. This stems from the public choice theory of planning. So when a president or a regional leader gets elected, they enter office with a specific vision and mission that the public, just voted for.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so the political engine's job is to translate those campaign promises into medium-term policies.
Okay, so the voters ask for something, the politicians try to deliver it. That's engine 1.
Right, but then you have the second engine, which is the technocratic process.
The technocrats.
Exactly. This one operates on the scientific method and hard data. It's driven by the functional agencies, the economists, the statisticians, the engineers.
The people running the spreadsheet.
Yes, they look at demographic projections, resource constraints, environmental impact assessments, all of that.
Wait, those 2 engines feel like they're on an immediate collision course.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Because I'm picturing like a newly elected governor who just won by promising to build a massive state-of-the-art hospital in every single district. That's the political process at work, right?
Right. Big promises.
But then the technocrats run the numbers and say, well, we only have the tax revenue and the medical staff to support 3 hospitals total.
Yes, that happens all the time.
So how do the lofty, often kind of unrealistic promises of the political process not completely steamroll the cold, hard data of technocrats, or I guess vice versa? That just sounds like a recipe for total administrative gridlock.
Well, that exact gridlock is the tension the system is purposefully designed to manage.
Like, purposefully.
Yes. When the politician demands 10 hospitals and the technocrat's budget legally caps it at 3, you need a mechanism to resolve the clash. And that brings us to the third engine, the participatory approach. The lecture highlights a very specific mechanism for this called Musrenbang.
Musrenbang. Okay, how does that operate on a practical level?
It's a structured series of participatory planning meetings. So imagine town halls happening in thousands of individual villages simultaneously.
Wow, all at once.
Basically, yeah. Citizens, local leaders, interest groups, they all gather to debate and bundle their most urgent needs. And then those village priorities are aggregated and sent up to the district level, where they are debated again, and then pushed up to the provincial and national levels.
That's a massive undertaking.
It is. It formalizes community involvement directly into the planning mechanism.
Oh, I see. So to solve the hospital gridlock, the politicians and technocrats look at the Musrenbang data to ask the citizens themselves, like, which 3 districts actually need the hospitals the most?
Exactly. And that flows right into the fourth engine, which is the top-down and bottom-up process.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It ensures that overarching national priorities flow downward, while local grassroots realities flow upward. And it forces them to find harmony somewhere in the middle.
I really see the genius in that. The friction isn't a bug, it's the core feature.
Precisely.
Because if the system were purely technocratic, it would be this cold, calculated machine that ignores human nuances, like that need for self-esteem we talked about. But if we're purely political, populist promises would bankrupt the country in a year.
Right, you'd run out of money instantly.
So the Musrenbang process acts as the shock absorber between the 2.
It really does. Dr. Solony notes that a planning system has to be a learning and adaptive system. This managed conflict ensures integration across different government functions, and, it keeps the plan grounded in reality.
But practically speaking, once these 4 engines fight it out, how do you prevent the resulting compromise from becoming just another glossy wish list?
That's the danger, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we see this in the corporate world all the time. You have a brilliant off-site brainstorming session. Everyone aligns on a vision, and then absolutely zero execution happens because everyone just goes back to their daily routines.
Yeah. To stop that, you have to give the plan legal teeth.
Hmm.
You need a rigid framework to enforce the compromise, which brings us to the bureaucratic skeleton of the NDPS. They don't just draft strategy memos, they actually bind the plans to the law.
Okay, reading through the lecture's breakdown of these planning documents, I immediately pictured a massive industrial gearbox.
A gearbox. Walk me through how you see the mechanics of that.
Well, you start with the biggest, heaviest gear, right? The long-term plan. In Indonesia, they call this the RPJP, which covers a 20-year trajectory.
Right, 20 years.
And this isn't just a mission statement. It is codified into actual law by the legislature. So it turns very slowly, but it has massive momentum.
Exactly. The 20-year trajectory is structurally locked in. It's
Right.
hard to budge.
Right. Then the teeth of that massive 20-year gear interlock with the slightly smaller gear, the medium-term plan, or RPJM.
The 5-year plan.
Yeah, it covers 5 years, translating the massive 20-year law into actionable goals for one specific political term. And this is backed by presidential and local head regulations.
So the momentum transfers downward.
And it keeps transferring. That 5-year gear spins in even faster gear, the strategic plans for specific ministries, known as Renstro,
Right, getting more specific.
which finally connects to the fastest spinning gears on the floor, the annual working plans, or Renja. Those dictate exactly what a local agency is doing on, like, a random Tuesday.
It cascades all the way down to the daily tasks.
Yeah. And if one gear breaks or tries to spin in the wrong direction, the entire machine locks up because every single piece is legally mandated to align with the gear above it.
The mechanics of your gearbox analogy explain perfectly how they prevent political whiplash, because the lecture outlines incredible rigor for the contents of these documents.
They really don't leave it to chance, do they?
Not at all. Every gear must contain specific elements. They need the desired final goals, identified problems, exact resource allocation, the executing agencies, and strict monitoring mechanisms.
They even explicitly mandate these SMART criteria. I mean, anyone who's survived a corporate management seminar knows SMART goals, right?
Oh, yeah. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely.
But applying that to national law is wild.
It's a completely different scale. The goal must be specific, meaning crystal clear, leaving absolutely no room for a new politician to loosely interpret it. Measurable, because, as one of Dr. Salihan's slides literally notes, what gets measured gets managed. Attainable within a reasonable cost, relevant to the actual needs of the people, and timely.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, my department can't even stick to a Q3 roadmap, let alone a legally binding 20-year plan.
Right, it seems impossible.
This is exactly why this hierarchy is so strict. It creates a predetermined track that the train must run on, regardless of who is in the conductor's seat.
Precisely.
If a new official takes over a local water agency, they can't just scrap the 5-year sanitation plan to fund some pet project. Their annual budget is legally tethered to the 20-year national law.
Yes. The fundamental purpose of this rigid hierarchy is to eliminate uncertainty and just stop the hemorrhage of inefficient resource use. It forces an absolute, unavoidable consistency between the planning phase, the budgeting phase, the implementation, and the final supervision.
Okay, so let's zoom out and look at the whole machine for a second. We have this incredibly holistic definition of development that actually values human dignity. We have the 4 engines, politics, data, and citizen input, grinding out a balanced direction.
Right.
And we have this legally binding gearbox ensuring the vision actually gets executed. It's honestly an administrative marvel.
It is very impressive on paper.
But here is the massive bottleneck. Even with all those laws, the government simply doesn't have the manpower or the capital to build everything and employ everyone. The state cannot execute a 20-year master plan alone.
And that realization is the pivot point of Dr. Salishan's entire lecture.
Okay, how so?
Hell, to pull this off, the state has to undergo a massive paradigm shift in how it views its own existence. It is the transition from government to governance.
Government versus governance. I mean, in casual conversation, we use those as synonyms, but the lecture treats them as entirely opposite philosophies.
They are completely opposed in this context. The lecture defines the historical government paradigm as a monopoly.
A monopoly on what?
On power. Under the old model, the state holds the exclusive, total right to regulate public affairs. The government is the sole provider of services and the sole authority on progress.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, any outside actors like a private business or a community neighborhood watch, they are only allowed to participate if the state explicitly grants them permission.
It's top-down control in its purest form.
Mm,
Basically, the state is the parent and everyone else is a child.
exactly. But the governance paradigm shatters that monopoly. A bureaucracy intentionally gives up its total power, which is a radical administrative move.
Giving up power willingly, that is rare.
Very.
Yeah.
It introduces what Dr. Salehin calls the troika. It's a balance of three distinct pillars: the state, the business entity, and the citizens.
Rather than thinking of it as three isolated pillars, it feels more like a load-bearing architectural truss.
A truss.
Yeah, those roof structures where multiple beams push against each other to distribute the weight?
Sure, I know what you mean.
If you remove one point of tension, the entire roof just collapses.
That structural dependency is key. Under the new paradigm, the role of the state is no longer to do all the heavy lifting. The government's job is simply to build and maintain the legal and political environment. They are essentially just the referee ensuring stability.
So if the government is just the referee building the arena, I assume they rely entirely on the private business sector to actually generate the capital, build the industries, and create the jobs.
Yes, the business entity is the economic engine. They bring the wealth generation, from massive multinational corporations down to the local corner store. But the third beam in that truss is equally vital: the people.
How do everyday citizens act as a load-bearing beam in a national strategy, though?
Well, citizens organize through NGOs, professional associations, media outlets, and community groups. They drive the social and political interaction.
Right.
They are the fabric that gives the economic wealth actual meaning, and most importantly, they are the tension point that holds both the government and the businesses accountable.
Ah, I see. So if any one of those beams rots, the roof caves in. If the state is corrupt, the legal environment fails and businesses flee.
Yep.
If the business sector is weak, you have no tax revenue or jobs, regardless of how beautifully written your 20-year plan is.
Exactly.
And if the citizen beam is weak, like if you suppress the media or ban community organizing, you completely lose that democracy and self-esteem we talked about at the very beginning.
This is where Dr. Salehin defines good governance. Governance is only good when the interactions between these three beams are built on transparency, accountability, and participation.
It has to be balanced.
Right. If the state and the business sector collude in secret, cutting the citizens out of the equation, the trust fails. You no longer have good governance, you just have an oligarchy.
Which leads to the most profound insight in this entire document. The lecture draws a stark line between two concepts: development in the region versus true regional development.
Oh, yes. Development in the region represents the old passive paradigm. It's like a government contractor showing up to a village, building a water well, and leaving.
Just a transaction.
Right. The citizens didn't participate, they just received a service. It breeds reliance. True regional development, on the other hand, is about capacity building.
It's not just building the well, it's the government teaching the town how to manage their own water utility, allowing local businesses to maintain it, and giving the citizens the legal framework to oversee it themselves. You are empowering them to generate their own prosperity.
And that connects perfectly to Tadaro's definition from the start of our discussion. You aren't just handing out physical hardware. You are giving the community the agency, the freedom, and the self-esteem to code their own operating system.
It's beautiful, really.
It is a profound shift from a system of state dependence to a system of true civic empowerment.
So bringing all of this out of the theoretical and back down to the ground. If you're managing a team, launching a startup, or trying to fix a broken corporate culture, the NDPS framework gives you a phenomenal diagnostic tool.
Absolutely.
First, check your definition of success. If your only metric is output and you completely ignore the agency and self-esteem of the people doing the work, your progress is a house of cards.
Second, you need a gearbox. You have to connect your long-term vision to your daily tasks using specific, measurable mechanisms that force consistency.
And third, you have to abandon the illusion of total top-down control. You need to build your own load-bearing truss. Leadership sets the environment, operations drive the value, and your community, whether that's your employees or your customers, they must be given the transparency to participate and hold the system accountable.
It is an incredibly robust way to navigate complexity at literally any scale.
But it also leaves us with a lingering philosophical puzzle, and this is where I want to leave you today.
Okay, what is it?
Dr. Salehin's lecture explicitly states that a flawless plan must be a learning and adaptive system. It relies on the messy, constantly shifting desires of millions of participants flowing through processes like mushroombang.
The plan has to breathe.
Exactly. So here's a question to mull over. If a master plan must constantly adapt to the people it serves, at what point does it cease to be a static administrative document and become a living organism?
That's a great question.
Right. And if your plan is effectively alive, how do you continuously measure something as invisible as the self-esteem of the system